The Afsharids were members of a native Iranian dynasty of Turkic origin, specifically the Afshar tribe, from Khorasan, who ruled Persia in the 18th century. The dynasty was founded in 1736 by the brilliant military commander Nader Shah, who deposed the last member of the Safavid dynasty and proclaimed himself Shah of Iran. During Nader's reign, Iran reached its greatest extent since the Sassanid Empire, and at its height it controlled modern-day Iran, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, most of the North Caucasus, Afghanistan, Bahrain, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Pakistan, and parts of Iraq, Turkey, North India, and Oman. After his death, most of his empire was divided between the Zands, Durranish, Georgians, and the Caucasian Khanates, while Afsharid rule was confined to a small local state in Khorasan. Finally, the Afsharid dynasty was overthrown by Muhammad Khan Qayar in 1796, who would establish a new native Iranian empire and restore Iranian suzerainty over several of the aforementioned regions. The dynasty was named after the Turkic Afshar tribe from Khorasan in northeast Iran to which Nader belonged. The Afshars had originally migrated from Turkestan to Azerbaijan in the 13th century. In the early 17th century, Shah Abbas the Great moved many Afshars from Azerbaijan to Khorasan to defend the northeastern borders of his state against the Uzbeks, after which the Afshars became native to those regions. Nader belonged to the Kiraklu branch of the Afshars. Foundation of the dynasty. Nader Shah was born into a humble semi-nomadic family of an Afshar tribe of Khorasan, where he became a local warlord. His path to power began when the Ghizai Mir Mahmud Hotaki overthrew the weakened and disintegrated Safavid Shah Sultan Hussein in 1722. At the same time, Ottoman and Russian forces seized Iranian land. Russia took swaths of Iran's Caucasian territories in the North Caucasus and Transcaucasia, as well as mainland northern Iran by the Russo-Persian War, while the neighboring Ottomans invaded from the west. By the 1724 Constantinople Treaty, they agreed to divide the conquered areas between themselves. On the other side of the theatre, Nader joined forces with Sultan Hussein's son Tahmasp II and led the resistance against the Ghizai Afghans, driving their leader Ashraf Khan easily out of the capital in 1729 and establishing Tahmasp on the throne. Nader fought to regain the lands lost to the Ottomans and Russians and to restore Iranian hegemony in Iran. While he was away in the east fighting the Ghizais, Tahmasp allowed the Ottomans to retake territory in the west. Nader, disgusted, had Tahmasp deposed in favor of his baby son Abbas III in 1732. 4 years later, after he had recaptured most of the lost Persian lands, Nader was confident enough to have himself proclaimed Shah in his own right at a ceremony on the Mohan Plain. He subsequently made the Russians cede the taken territories taken in 1722 to 1723 through the Treaty of Risht of 1732 and the Treaty of Ganja of 1735, back in control of the integral northern territories, and with a new Russo-Iranian alliance against the common Ottoman enemy. He continued the Ottoman-Persian War, which ended with the Ottoman armies being expelled from western Iran and the rest of the Caucasus, and resulted in the Treaty of Constantinople, which amongst the terms of the treaty, forced the Ottomans to confirm Iranian suzerainty over the Caucasus and recognized Nader as the new Iranian Shah. Conquest of Nader Shah and the succession problem. Copied content from Nader Shah article. See that article's history for attribution. Fall of the Hotaki dynasty. Tahmasp and the Qayar leader Fath Ali Khan contacted Nader and asked him to join their cause and drive the Ghizai Afghans out of Khorasan. He agreed and thus became a figure of national importance. When Nader discovered that Fath Ali Khan was in treacherous correspondence with Malik Mahmud and revealed this to the Shah, Tahmasp executed him and made Nader the chief of his army instead. Nader subsequently took on the title Tahmasp Ali. In late 1726, Nader recaptured Mashhad, Nader chose not to march directly on Isfahan. First, in May 1729, he defeated the Abdali Afghans near Herat. Many of the Abdali Afghans subsequently joined his army. The new Shah of the Ghizai Afghans, Ashraf, decided to move against Nader, but in September 1729, Nader defeated him at the Battle of Damgan and again decisively in November at Merchakort, banishing the Afghans from Persian soil forever. Ashraf fled and Nader finally entered Isfahan, handing it over to Tahmasp in December. The citizens' rejoicing was cut short when Nader plundered them to pay his army. Tahmasp made Nader governor over many eastern provinces, including his native Khorasan, and married him to his sister. Nader pursued and defeated Ashraf, who was murdered by his own followers. In 1738 Nader Shah besieged and destroyed the last Hotaki seat of power at Kandahar. He built a new city near Kandahar, which he named Naderabad. First Ottoman campaign and the regain of the Caucasus. Copied content from Nader Shah article. See that article's history for attribution. In the spring of 1735, Nader attacked Persia's arch-rival, the Ottomans, and regained most of the territory lost during the recent chaos. At the same time, the Abdali Afghans rebelled and besieged Mashhad, forcing Nader to suspend his campaign and save his brother, Ibrahim. It took Nader 14 months to crush this uprising. Relations between Nader and the Shah had declined as the latter grew jealous of his general's military successes. While Nader was absent in the east, Tahmasp tried to assert himself by launching a foolhardy campaign to recapture Yerevan. He ended up losing all of Nader's recent gains to the Ottomans, and signed a treaty ceding Georgia and Armenia in exchange for Tabriz. Nader, furious, saw that the moment had come to ease Tahmasp from power. He denounced the treaty, seeking popular support for a war against the Ottomans. In Isfahan, Nader got Tahmasp drunk, then showed him to the courtiers asking if a man in such a state was fit to rule. In 1732 he forced Tahmasp to abdicate in favor of the Shah's baby son, Abbas III, to whom Nader became regent. Nader decided, as he continued the 1730–35 war, that he could win back the territory in Armenia and Georgia by seizing Ottoman Baghdad and then offering it in exchange for the lost provinces. But his plan went badly amiss when his army was routed by the Ottoman general Topal Osman Pasha near the city in 1733. Nader decided he needed to regain the initiative as soon as possible to save his position because revolts were already breaking out in Persia. He faced Topal again with a larger force and defeated and killed him. He then besieged Baghdad, as well as Ganja in the northern provinces, earning a Russian alliance against the Ottomans. Nader scored a great victory over a superior Ottoman force at Yerevan. By the summer of 1735, Persian Armenia and Georgia were his again. In March 1735, he signed a treaty with the Russians in Ganja by which the latter agreed to withdraw all of their troops from Persian territory. Those which had not been ceded back by the 1732 Treaty of Rishtiet, mainly regarding Derbent, Baku, Turkey, and the surrounding lands, resulting in the re-establishment of Iranian rule over all of the Caucasus and northern mainland Iran again. Nader becomes Shah. Copied content from Nader Shah article. See that article's history for attribution. In January 1736, Nader held a cour-altaire on the Moan Plain. The leading political and religious figures attended. Nader suggested he should be proclaimed the new Shah in place of the young Abbas III. Everyone agreed, many, if not most, enthusiastically, the rest fearing Nader's anger if they showed support for the deposed Safavids. Nader was crowned Shah of Iran on March 8, 1736, a date which as astrologers had chosen as being especially propitious. Invasion of the Mughal Empire. Copied content from Nader Shah article. See that article's history for attribution. In 1738, Nader Shah conquered Kandahar, the last outpost of the Hotaki dynasty. His thoughts now turned to the Mughal Empire based in Delhi. This once powerful Muslim state to the east was falling apart as the nobles became increasingly disobedient, and the Hindu Marathas of the Maratha Empire made inroads on its territory from the southwest. Its ruler Muhammad Shah was powerless to reverse this disintegration. Nader asked for the Afghan rebels to be handed over, but the Mughal emperor refused. Nader used the pretext of his Afghan enemies taking refuge in India to cross the border and invade the militarily weak but still extremely wealthy Far Eastern Empire. And in a brilliant campaign against the governor of Peshawar, he took a small contingent of his forces on a daunting flank march through nearly impassable mountain passes and took the enemy forces positioned at the mouth of the Khyber Pass completely by surprise, utterly beating them despite being outnumbered 2-1. This led to the capture Ghazni, Kabul, Peshawar, Sindh and Lahore. As he moved into the Mughal territories, he was loyally accompanied by his Georgian subject and future king of Georgia, Erikal II, who led a Georgian contingent as a military commander as part of Nader's force. Following the defeat of Mughal forces priorly, he then advanced deeper into India, crossing the river Indus before the end of year. The news of the Persian army's swift and decisive successes against the northern vassal states of the Mughal Empire caused much consternation in Delhi, prompting the Mughal ruler, Muhammad Shah, to summon an overwhelming force of some 300,000 men and march this gigantic host north towards the Persian army. Nader Shah crushed the Mughal army in less than 3 hours at the huge Battle of Karnal on 13 February 1739. After this spectacular victory, Nader captured Muhammad Shah and entered with him into Delhi. When a rumor broke out that Nader had been assassinated, some of the Indians attacked and killed Persian troops. Nader, furious, reacted by ordering his soldiers to plunder and sack the city. During the course of one day, 20,000 to 30,000 Indians were killed by the Persian troops, forcing Muhammad Shah to beg Nader for mercy. In response, Nader Shah agreed to withdraw, but Muhammad Shah paid the consequence in handing over the keys of his royal treasury, and losing even the peacock throne to the Persian emperor. The peacock throne thereafter served as a symbol of Persian imperial might. It is estimated that Nader took away with him treasures worth as much as 700 million rupees, among a trove of other fabulous jewels. Nader also gained the Koh-i-Noor and Darya-e-Noor diamonds. The Persian troops left Delhi at the beginning of May 1739. Nader's soldiers also took with them thousands of elephants, horses and camels, loaded with the booty they had collected. The plunder seized from India was so rich that Nader stopped taxation in Iran for a period of 3 years following his return. Nader attacked the empire to, perhaps, give his country some breathing space after previous turmoils. The North Caucasus, Central Asia, Arabia, and the Second Ottoman War. The Indian campaign was the zenith of Nader's career. After his return from India, Nader fell out with his eldest son Reza Ali Mirza, who had ruled Persia during his father's absence. Having heard a rumor that Nader was dead, he had prepared to seize the throne by having the Safavid royal captives, Tahmasp and his son Abbas, executed. Nader was not pleased with the young man's behavior and humiliated him by removing him from the post of viceroy. Nader became increasingly despotic as his health declined markedly. Nader had left his son Reza Ali Mirza to rule Persia in his absence. Reza had behaved high-handedly and somewhat cruelly, but he had kept the peace in Persia. Having heard rumors that his father had died, he had made preparations for assuming the crown. These included the murder of the former Shah Tahmasp and his family, including the 9-year-old Abbas III. On hearing the news, Reza's wife, who was Tahmasp's sister, committed suicide. Nader was not impressed with his son's waywardness and reprimanded him, but he took him on his expedition to conquer territory in Transoxiana. In 1740 he conquered Khanate of Khiva, after the Persians had forced the Uzbek Khanate of Bukhara to submit. Nader wanted Reza to marry the Khan's elder daughter because she was a descendant of his hero Genghis Khan. but Reza flatly refused and Nader married the girl himself. Nader also conquered Khwarezm on this expedition into Central Asia. Nader now decided to punish Dagestan for the death of his brother Ibrahim Ali on a campaign a few years earlier. In 1741, while Nader was passing through the forest of Mazandaran on his way to fight the Dagestanis, an assassin took a shot at him but Nader was only lightly wounded. He began to suspect his son was behind the attempt and confined him to Tehran. Nader's increasing ill health made his temper ever worse. Perhaps it was his illness that made Nader lose the initiative in his war against the Lezgian tribes of Dagestan. Frustratingly for him, they resorted to guerrilla warfare and the Persians could make little headway against them. At the Battle of Andalal and the Battle of Avaria, Nader's army was crushingly defeated and he lost half of his entire force, as well forcing him to flee for the mountains. Though Nader managed to take most of Dagestan during his campaign, the effective guerrilla warfare as deployed by the Lezgins, but also the Avars and Laks made the Iranian reconquest of the particular North Caucasian region this time a short-lived one. Several years later, Nader was forced to withdraw. During the same period, Nader accused his son of being behind the assassination attempt in Mazandaran. Reza angrily protested his innocence, but Nader had him blinded as punishment, although he immediately regretted it. Soon afterwards, Nader started executing the nobles who had witnessed his son's blinding. In his last years, Nader became increasingly paranoid, ordering the assassination of large numbers of suspected enemies. With the wealth he gained, Nader started to build a Persian navy. With lumber from Mazandaran, he built ships in Bushehr. He also purchased 30 ships in India. He recaptured the island of Bahrain from the Arabs. In 1743, he conquered Oman and its main capital Muscat. In 1743, Nader started another war against the Ottoman Empire. Despite having a huge army at his disposal, in this campaign Nader showed little of his former military brilliance. It ended in 1746 with the signing of a peace treaty, in which the Ottomans agreed to let Nader occupy Najaf. Afsharid military. See Military of the Afsharid dynasty of Persia. Religious policy. Copied content from Nader Shah article. See that article's history for attribution. The Safavids had introduced Shia Islam as the state religion of Iran. Nader was probably brought up as a Shia but later espoused the Sunni faith as he gained power and began to push into the Ottoman Empire. He believed that Safavid Shi'ism had intensified the conflict with the Sunni Ottoman Empire. His army was a mix of Shia and Sunni and included his own Kizilbash as well as Uzbeks, Afghans, Christian Georgians and Armenians, and others. He wanted Persia to adopt a form of religion that would be more acceptable to Sunnis and suggested that Persia adopt a form of Shi'ism he called Jafari. In honor of the sixth Shia Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, he banned certain Shia practices which were particularly offensive to Sunnis, such as the cursing of the first three caliphs. Personally, Nader is said to have been indifferent towards religion, and the French Jesuit who served as his personal physician reported that it was difficult to know which religion he followed and that many who knew him best said that he had none. Nader hoped that Jafarism would be accepted as a fifth school of Sunni Islam and that the Ottomans would allow its adherents to go on the Hajj, or pilgrimage, to Mecca, which was within their territory. In the subsequent peace negotiations, the Ottomans refused to acknowledge Jafarism as a fifth mazhab, but they did allow Persian pilgrims to go on the Hajj. Nader was interested in gaining rights for Persians to go on the Hajj in part because of revenues from the pilgrimage trade. Nader's other primary aim in his religious reforms was to weaken the Safavids further, since Shia Islam had always been a major element in support for the dynasty. He had the chief mullah of Persia strangled after he was heard expressing support for the Safavids. Among his reforms was the introduction of what came to be known as the Kola-e Naderi. This was a hat with 4 peaks which symbolized the first 4 caliphs.